I think I'll stop there and just see if you have any questions, and I'm willing to answer any questions that you have. I mean, you name it, I'll answer it. Since I'm Lieutenant Governor, nothing is newsworthy, so you can ask me. Let me tell you, I don't know Elliot Spitzer, I haven't met Governor McGreevy or his wife, I mean, none of that stuff. But, I mean, you can ask me, anything that you want about state government, about any piece of legislation, about what it's like to be up here, about the stock market, banking, I mean, anything, you name it. So does anybody have any questions?
We've had a big discussion, big debates around Hayes on wind power.
Yeah.
And from the point of just outside the city to actually some low-profile turbines in the city itself. And I kind of, like to hear your views on wind power and what you think the uses are and the future is for the state of Kansas.
I think the future of wind power is really huge. And it's huge whether Congress passes. There's a lot of speculation that Congress will pass regulations on carbon next year, and if that happens, wind will be very big very quickly. But even if that doesn't happen, wind power will be a very big industry, simply because the cost of producing electricity by wind power is getting very close to becoming the cheapest cost of any other source. For a long time, the renewables like solar and wind were much more expensive than nuclear, natural gas, and coal. Wind has been the real winner in terms of coming down in cost. So wind is now cheaper than natural gas. It's probably cheaper than nuclear, and I say probably. We haven't built a new nuclear plant in 30 years, so nobody really knows how much nuclear costs. And in good wind areas, people will argue that wind is actually cheaper than coal. Westar just announced, or they didn't just announce, they announced last year, and they're now building 300 megawatts of wind. To put that in perspective, that's about 3% of the electricity in Kansas. And when they filed with the Kansas Corporation Commission, in their filing, they said that if you assume a $10 tax on carbon per ton, that wind is actually cheaper than coal. So what does that mean for Western Kansas? It means really, really good things. Because what's going to happen is that this year we're building 650 megawatts of wind, primarily in Western Kansas. That's $1.3 billion in construction. Once we develop transmission lines so that we can send wind power not just to Kansas but to other parts of the country, there are people that believe that we'll build 5 and maybe even 10,000 megawatts of wind power in Western Kansas. That's like $10 or $20 billion worth of construction. And if you're a farmer or a landowner who's fortunate enough to have a turbine on your land, it's incredible. I mean, it used to be that they'd get $2,000 to $4,000 for every turbine on their land. Now they're getting like $8,000 to $10,000 a year for every turbine on their land. It's a bit of a lottery. It's kind of like, oil. If you have it, you have it. But virtually the entire western eighth of the state is good for wind farms. Now, we believe, as strongly as we advocate wind, we believe that there are plenty of good sites in Kansas. In fact, there's so many good sites that we don't need to put wind farms in places that people don't want them. And if the members of an individual city don't want a wind farm right next to their city, we support the rights of that city or that county commission to make that decision. Simply because we know that there are so many good locations that are 5 miles out of town or 10 miles out of town that are on good transmission that will work. And so we're not advocating any legislation that would force wind anywhere where people don't want it. But there are lots and lots of great places for wind in Kansas where people want it, and it's going to be a huge industry in this state. If Congress passes a bill next year to tax carbon, within 2 or 3 years you're going to see a ton of wind farm development in western Kansas. If they don't do that, 5, 10, 15 years from now, wind farms, you'll see wind farms just like you see oil wells. They'll be all over the place.